But before we'll take a closer look at the advantages and disadvantages of Tailwind CSS, let's first explore another very important styling problem you frequently face. What if you need different styles for different screen sizes, or if you wanna style pseudo selectors like we had it here in the button for the hover style? Well, let's start with media queries. Of course, Tailwind has a solution for that. In the official docs, under responsive design, you learn that there are certain prefixes you can add to your utility classes to only apply them if you have a certain minimum screen width. For example, if you add MD: in front of this width class will only be applied if you are at least on a medium-sized screen with this minimum width. And therefore, translated to our application here, where I have these special styles for my header and the h1 element, I can go back to header.jsx and, for example, make sure that on this header, we only have this huge margin to the bottom if we have at least a medium-sized screen by prefixing this with MD:. And now I can set up a default margin to the bottom of, let's say, 2 rem with MB8. Now this will always be applied, and this will be applied instead if we have that bigger screen. And the same can be done here for the h1 element. We can use this big text if we have at least a medium-sized screen. Otherwise, we could apply the text XL utility class, which still sets up a large text, but not as large as it is with text for XL. And therefore, if I save this, it looks exactly as before, but if I shrink my screen, you see the text gets smaller and the margin here below the header also got smaller than it is on bigger screens. Now, what about hover styles though? Well, for this, let's go back to this button here. And of course, here at the moment, I'm using a styled component, and that's not one I want to use anymore. So I will actually clear this file and instead export a button component function here, where I return a standard button and where I use the children prop so that my own button can be wrapped around content that should then go in here. And I'll collect any remaining props here and simply forward them to this button here, like that. But with that, of course, we're not using Tailwind yet. Instead, that can now be done by again adding class name and then adding all the classes we want to have here. And for this button, that means that I want to have some padding to the left and right, which can be set with the px class here, maybe 1 rem with px4. Then some padding to the top and bottom, maybe py2 for 0.5 rem. I want to have a semi-bold font here, let's say. It should be all uppercase, let's say. I want to have some rounded corners by adding the rounded utility class or one of these other rounded classes to control the border radius, as you can see here on the right. But I'll go for rounded. And then I'll give this a text color of text stone 900, which is a dark gray. BG amber 400 to use this yellow orangish background color. And to now make sure that we got a different style when we hover over this button, I'll add hover : in front of the utility class that should only be applied if the button is in a hover state. So if we are hovering over that button. So just as we can use MD and other screen size classes to add certain utility classes only on certain screen sizes, we can use hover or focus : to only apply certain utility classes if these elements are in a certain state. In this case, if we're hovering over this button. And then here we can add BG amber 500 as a background color, let's say. so that we use this darker background color if we are hovering over this button. With that, we again got a pretty long class list here, but with that, if I save this, you see this button. The regular background color is a bit hard to see right now because this input area has no background, but if I hover over it, you can clearly see that this changes.